Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. So I obviously covered the news of this new comic being initially revealed last night, very shortly after the panel ended. So we're now the following day, and there has been a little bit of stuff that came out in the kind of hours kind of following all that stuff. I would say we still don't have any super concrete information. Again, communication has still been pretty bad. It doesn't seem like a lot of fans necessarily posted about their experiences in the panel. We have a little bit, we have some sense for some of the other stuff talked about, but it doesn't really come across as if there was a full-on another announcement. So before we get into that stuff, I do want to just talk about the fact that the big thing probably that's happened is that, full high quality cover reveal for Ashes of the Academy has come out. I think I caught that for my thumbnail last night and I linked it in like the comments. But yeah, they put that out eventually, and then it seems like overnight the listing at the very least so far has gone up on the Dark Horse website. So you can see here we got this initial kind of basic description, but now we have the full description for the book, so we can go over that. But otherwise it's exactly the same stuff as usual. March 25th/26th, same creative team that we already know, of course. Before we get into the description, they mention this on a lot of the description for these books, that's written in consultation with Mike and Brian. That kind of faded away for a little bit, especially at the start of One Shot Comics, but they've come back to it here. So I'm wondering if that maybe suggests that it is a little bit more connected to the main material, that because it involves like really important characters where some of their stories we don't know the exact details about, is there a little bit of an extra connection to Avatar Studios with this one compared to maybe the last book, which the June and Iroh comic, which maybe didn't need as much of a focus. That's just kind of interesting in that they kind of note Mike and Brian in the writer section here, which hasn't, especially in recent years, been the case for all Avatar books. But the description: Ki, half-sister to Fire Lord Zuko, enrolls at the Royal Fire Academy for Girls. Known for its strict curriculum and even stricter instructors, Zuko worries for Ki. So that's the part we had from before that I covered in the last video. When things take a turn for the worse and a seed of doubt about the new headmistress is planted, Zuko takes action by installing one of the people he trusts most, May, as an academy teacher. Can May keep a watchful eye over Ki and keep her on the right path? Or will the Academy's cruel culture shape her footsteps into those of her other half-sibling, Azula? So, this is very interesting. So straight away, there's a new headmistress here, which is interesting, because one of the questions you'd probably have about this is like, well, Zuko's the Fire Lord. Surely he has a certain amount of control over, what goes on at the Fire Academy. And I guess maybe one of the things that has happened here is that he has helped, or at least allowed, a new headmistress to be kind of installed here, because I'm guessing some changes have had to be made in the aftermath of the war, just when it comes to history, the stopping of sort of Fire Nation propaganda, now that we're trying to enter kind of an era of peace. So some amount of change is actually happening here, but the Academy, I guess, especially in recent eras, has developed maybe a little bit of a cruel culture. Maybe it's always had that, because again, we have reference to the Fire Academy from the Kyoshi novels, and it seems like some pretty crazy stuff went on there when it came to, how headmistresses are chosen, and, rivalries between different kind of clans and stuff like that. But again, it's important to remember, with regards to the whole evil Fire Nation stuff, that is a 100-year war era kind of thing, and set up from towards the end of the Kyoshi era, kind of going into the 100-year war era. So in eras prior to that, the Royal Fire Academy still existed and wasn't a evil construct or anything like that. So it'll be interesting to see how they balance this as being an important institution in kind of Fire Nation history, but also highlighting that it has maybe been shaped and morphed into something a little bit different through the 100-year war era, and what that has done to the Fire Nation. So yeah, new headmistress character. I'm guessing this probably will be a new character. Otherwise, they might have perhaps wanted to directly mention this, but who knows? Maybe it is someone that we are familiar with, but that's interesting. So there's a seed of doubt about this new headmistress. What's going on here? So Zuko decides, hey, I have enough sway as Fire Lord to get someone in there as a new teacher, so he puts May in there, interestingly. So I wonder what specifically her role is going to be. Obviously, teacher, but is it for a specific subject? Is it for a specific age group, like Key, like the new entrance into the academy? Is that going to be sort of like May's role? And then, to a certain degree, it's like, oh yeah, there's probably a lot that we don't know about May with regards to, like, I guess she has certain skills that will allow her to actually be effective in this role and not just like, wait, I'm not a teacher, what am I doing? So there's obviously some reasoning behind that will kind of be interesting to get into here, which I just think is a very interesting position to put May into here, where we get to, I guess, see her either be a teacher and maybe adapt to the role, maybe realize it's something that she actually likes, or maybe struggle with it because it's a bit of a kind of different thing. Can she be the kind of spy sort of in a way, like, required here? But then, yeah, she's asked to basically keep a watchful eye over Kiyi. So obviously, like, Zuko being protective of Kiyi, I suppose just in general, but then also because there's doubt about the headmistress and kind of what's going on there. Try to keep her on the right path because of the academy's cruel culture. So I guess they're kind of committing to the idea that there always is a little bit of a sense of, like, yeah, especially I guess in more recent generations, the academy has been shaping, like, the girls that go into the academy into sort of, you know, loyal Fire Nation citizens with regards to what the Fire Nation has been about for a lot of the last generations, which is kind of interesting. And then I think it's fascinating that they do actually directly by name reference Azula here, who I wouldn't expect to see in the comic, though they could surprise us with that. Maybe Azula is doing something in the background, but you know, we don't know when exactly it's said. It's hard to fully speculate, but I'm guessing what they're kind of doing is just the idea of, to a certain degree, like, you know, what happened to shape Azula into, you know, the way she turned out. You know, characters thinking about Azula is going to be interesting when it comes to, like, May as her friend, Zuko as her brother. And then, especially because it is a Key-focused comic, how does Key feel about Azula? Because we didn't really get that idea explored that much in, say, like, Smoke and Shadow and The Search, really. So given that quite a bit of time has passed, Key's a bit older, I guess, it'll be interesting to see if she's asking questions about her sister, Azula, who she, of course, has, I guess, technically had an encounter with, but they didn't really, like, interact so much necessarily. And that's going to be an interesting one. My assumption is going to be that, like, Key is not going to be, like, corrupted by the academy here, but it will allow for some interesting exploration probably of Key and getting her thoughts about Azula. But also, you know, just an exploration of the Royal Fire Academy for Girls does seem like an interesting one in terms of, like, what is the cruel culture, especially in this kind of more modern time? What's the headmistress trying to do that has potentially caused doubt to come into mind? In terms of, like, is this someone maybe working against Zuko's rule? Ozai loyalist? Hard to properly make out, but it seems pretty interesting. Again, it is just a description. A lot of the times the descriptions maybe do leave out some of the key elements of the book, in that we don't know how much maybe Zuko and or May there's going to be in the book. The impression I almost get here is that it's probably more Key and May focused, and then Zuko will have a support role maybe more towards the start and maybe end of the book, but that if we're going to be in the academy, it's going to be Key and May interacting a lot, which still allows Zuko to have an influence, because if we're eventually maybe thinking of, we're going to build towards May and Zuko getting back together, because because again, technically they are still broken up. Even though things were quite positive between the two of them at the end of Smoke and Shadow, they didn't officially get back together. It's been a bit up in the air. If we're trying to do that, of course, any scenes that involve these two characters interacting is going to be good. But then also, because I suppose Ki and Zuko are so close, I'm guessing Zuko has talked about Mei to Ki quite a bit. So Ki might be able to talk, interacting with Mei a lot more at the academy, specifically about, hey, Zuzu mentions you a lot, and that might, change Mei's kind of perceptions on things a little bit and lead to maybe the final little issues between them kind of crumbling away, and maybe we end the book with them actually properly getting back together, or something that at least puts them in a position where it's pretty clear that, given a little bit more time, they will get back together. That's probably the main positive thing coming out of this, is that I think most of the reaction has been that everyone, I think, views Mei and Zuko being here on the cover. No mention in the description of conflict, and in fact, Zuko referring to Mei as one of his most trusted people, basically, as very positive towards this relationship, and that this is the direction we're ultimately heading in, and a sense that is that ultimately what this comic is doing. It's adjusting some of the comic things that have been set up over the years and putting them into place where we're more back in line with a more standard kind of where things have been with the Avatar franchise ahead of Avatar Studios. Because people might be very confused if we come into an Avatar Studios project and why aren't Zuko and Mei together? You have to read all these comics. Whereas if we just address that, oh, the comics had an arc of they broke up but then later got back together, then it's a little bit like, oh, that kind of makes sense, but, they're together. That feels a little bit better, and that's kind of the idea here. Ki still remains probably the character in terms of, like, older ATLA character content that probably will most need to be explained. So I guess them doing the job here of characterizing Ki quite strongly by giving her effectively her own comic is a good thing to do overall. I'm also assuming maybe towards the start or end of the book we will get some Ursa, some Norin, just to address that, like, hey, if we're going to be talking about her going to school, I guess her parents had a role in that, and it's not just Zuko, basically. So they're my thoughts on Ashes of the Academy so far. I don't think there's really any other details there necessarily. As for other stuff, the only other person I've seen reference actually being at the convention here on Instagram is Ember Island Collector, who posted a bunch of Instagram stories about stuff surrounding the convention. So a lot of this stuff is just merchandise stuff that we knew, that Rock Love, the new Avatar jewelry, of course, was making their big debut at the convention. I've covered this already, so I'm not going to focus on it too much there, but that's there. Noble Collection, I don't think any of this stuff is new there. These what are these, like, fanny packs, plushies there for Appa and Momo. I believe these are technically new, or they're just a company I've not necessarily come across myself. Again, more of this. There's some Appa plushies at the convention. Of course, they had the Reckoning of Roku kind of exclusive edition here with no kind of graphics and stuff like that. There's merchandise, Paramount merchandise, which we'll get to in a second, an exclusive fig pin, but this Christmas decoration, I guess. And then going into the panel, we'll go through this. So nothing interesting so far. I guess they did reference what they announced at the San Diego Comic-Con. Awakening of Roku is the next book, but again, I don't know what was said. Did they say what the description for the book is or not? I don't think so, but I'm also like, in that case, what did Randy Rabai actually talk about? Did Abrams have anything to say? I'm assuming if there was news, it would have been posted here, and there's not really anything, unfortunately. Again, fig pin stuff, Webtoon, I still don't really get why they're there if they don't have news. I know they teased at SDCC the idea of, like, they might have a deal to make in the future. I guess it's just not time yet, because they didn't do more than the expected announcements. So publishing ramping up, is not happening just yet, and I'm guessing will be more of like announcements over the next year probably to build into Avatar Studios. So it feels like it's a little bit pointless why webtoons are at these panels, but I guess we will see the value of this maybe more in the future, because I think I am still expecting them to have original content. It's just obviously the timing not fantastic so far. They again mentioned that Uncle Ira's Adventure Guide, which we know has its like official physical public release on November 7th. This is probably the only other piece of actual news, because previously the whole Avatar Legends RPG Magpie with Beetle and Grimm's thing about the Voyage of the Unity, all we knew was just that it is a premium adventure set that is happening via Kickstarter at some point. You can see some of the information here is somewhat clear, some of it not super clear. Kickstarter is fall 2024, and then I've looked at this quite a lot. I can't make out quite a few of the words, but it says something along the lines of Beetle and Grimm's original premium box set or like edition set for Avatar Legends role-playing game. 5, I think it's something like connected adventures within the Roku era, and that you can play each of the adventures kind of standalone or connected as part of a greater plot around the Unity. Because again, the Voyage of the Unity is a big kind of ship traveling across the world, kind of spreading news of kind of like technological advancements and stuff like that. So I guess the idea is that there's an adventure that maybe takes place up more towards the water tribes. There's one that's probably more in around the Earth Kingdom, Fire Islands, that whole idea. They can be very different things happening at different stages of the Unity. So it's a pretty kind of clever idea overall. And then it says here, the premium edition set includes, and again, I can't fully make out what exactly is said here, but I think it says maps. One of them definitely says artifacts. This might say something like handouts or something like that. But again, it's going to be a lot of like paper kind of extras with visuals, artwork, that sort of thing. Encounter cards and more. And yeah, Beetle and Grimm and the Kickstarter's fall 2024. Which means, I guess it's only a few weeks away from it happening, so we're going to have to find out more clear-cut information about this in the future. But for sure, 5 adventures in the Roku era is interesting. The Unity is super interesting. I'll be interested to know if, like, for instance, is there any Legend NPCs involved with this? That's probably a big thing in terms of the content. But because it's a premium edition set, so stuff like, say, maps, we get potentially unique and different maps of the world, images of the kind of midway through the Roku era, potentially. That's kind of interesting to me, depending on how big they go with it. So a lot's going to depend on what the price is for this Kickstarter, but that's the idea so far. And again, yeah, coming to Kickstarter, that's the main image that we have already. I don't think it's even a new image. I think that's just from the core book as well. So I'm maybe a little bit skeptical about how much new content's going to be in here, but they'll explain it on the Kickstarter. Then there's this. This is a very interesting detail here of just, it says, there's new avatars being developed at Avatar Studios, which is kind of like, well, yeah, of course, because like this first series that we're expecting to get is about the Avatar after Korra, basically. But they said this at a publishing panel. And I'm pretty sure, like, because you can see on the background is the Legends RPG stuff. So it's clearly the guy from Magpie talking about this, I guess, because it's not Cara O'Neill on the mic. And he's the one kind of alluding to new avatars at Avatar Studios. So my takeaway from this is probably more along the lines of Avatar Legends RPG maybe going forward will have stuff about new avatars, which I guess is a really interesting way to do sort of a blank period type thing for them. Now, does that mean they're maybe just working on a book to cover the era, like after Korra, the Earth Avatar era? Or are they going backwards and we're going to get kind of more of a random era? How much of the history are they going to fill in? Because it seems like, you know, across a lot of the other stuff, like the video game, we're getting the Avatar from 7,000 years ago. It seems like Avatar Studios is locking in a little bit more of the avatars, so them using the RPG to introduce more sounds like an interesting idea to me. Again, if anyone attended the convention, if you could in any way tell me what the exact wording was surrounding what was being said here, I would very much like to know. Because does this refer to specifically the Legends RPG, or does this mean all publishing is going to have access to these other new avatars? That like the novels can go in and address them, the comics, or is it just the RPG? Mystery of Pencheon Island. They showed the preview pages. Again, we've had these already overall. Then they did the announcement for Ashes of the Academy overall. And yeah, that's all there really is there. So, still questions, I would say, about like, hey, Rachel Silverstein was at the panel. Why was she there? Was she really there just to talk about Patterns in Time and her 4-page comic, or what? Did they say anything about other Korra comics beyond the Mako one? Because what we're potentially missing here is news that was just maybe spoken and said by the panelists versus stuff that came with like a visual that was very kind of maybe easy to report on, which I think is always a little bit frustrating. This is usually the stuff that doesn't get super reported on, like officially. That like Dark Horse, if they maybe did sneak in that like in a statement that like a tease of like a character for like the next Korra comic with no visual, that might not get reported on anywhere. But that's the situation that we have so far. So yeah, that's the video for today. Let me know what your thoughts are on the full description that we now have for Ashes of the Academy. What are your expectations for this? Big characters involved, but also a key focus is super interesting. And then any of the other stuff here that I talked about here, I suppose mainly stuff like the apparently the whole vague new avatar thing, Voyage of the Unity, any of the merchandise stuff. I'll quickly mention this. This is what they posted on like Instagram about them having new merch. You can see a bunch of this stuff has new on it. These ones that have the character's name and then a few pieces of stock imagery. This is not exciting news, like just t-shirts, especially t-shirts where there's no new art like whatsoever. They cover most of the main characters, but all the stock art is stuff we have seen before. Some of the graphics here and the colors on some of this other stuff is kind of nice, some stickers and so on, but it's a little bland. You know, you got a kind of cool Aang jersey here that's got some designs, but it's the same main Aang image that we've had for a while now. This is cool, but a little bit boring, and it also seems incredibly overpriced for what it is, but that's just my thoughts. Also, just to quickly mention that I will be doing a live stream tomorrow where I'll be talking on stream about New York Comic Con, all the news we had, so Ashes of the Academy, but I'll also be talking about stuff like the relatively recent news we got about the copyright listing for the Aang movie, as well as the AAA Avatar game. So a lot of the big news from the last while I'll be going over on stream tomorrow. By the time the video goes live, I should have that like listed up on the channel so you can see the exact details about what time it's going live at and so on. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.